Computer scientist Ray Kurzweil is currently principal researcher and AI visionary at Google and one of the most prominent authorities on AI and future technology. In both of his major books, The Singularity is Near, published in 2005, and The Singularity is Nearer from June 2024, Kurzweil opens with the same framework, what he calls the 6 epochs of intelligence. It maps out the history of the universe as a story of accelerating information processing, from subatomic particles to a merger of human and artificial intelligence. Each epoch is defined by a different medium for processing information and operates on a dramatically compressed timescale compared to the one before. In the first epoch, change is measured in billions of years. In the second, millions. In the third, thousands. In the fourth, where we are now, hours to days. And in the fifth and sixth epochs, which Kurzweil believes we are approaching and will be driven by AI, the timescale compresses to seconds, and then to less than seconds. The framework rests on what Kurzweil calls the law of accelerating returns. Each epoch uses the information processing methods of the previous one to create the next, and each operates at a timescale orders of magnitude faster than what came before. Exponential growth, he argues, starts out almost imperceptibly, and then rises with what he calls unexpected fury. Unexpected only if you are not tracking the trajectory. The first 4 epochs describe what has already happened, and the pattern of acceleration is genuinely there. Where it gets debatable is whether that pattern continues. So in this video, I want to explore something a bit different, describing and visualizing Kurzweil's 6 epochs of intelligence and covering the debate as to whether the final 2, the transition to a merger of human and artificial intelligence, will happen. According to the Big Bang Theory, the widely accepted model of how the universe began, around 13.8 billion years ago, all the matter and energy in the universe was compressed into an infinitely dense point. Then it expanded violently. As the universe cooled, atoms formed, and over billions of years, those atoms combined into increasingly complex molecules. For Kurzweil, this is the universe's first act of information storage. Patterns of matter and energy encoding the basic structures from which everything else would eventually follow. He makes an observation that verges on the philosophical. The physical constants of the universe are balanced with an extraordinary precision that permits the evolution of complexity. If the forces that hold atoms together were even slightly different, stable matter could not exist, and none of what followed would be possible. Where some see a divine hand in that precision, Kurzweil's view is simpler. If the universe hadn't permitted our evolution, we wouldn't be here to notice. The timescale of this epoch was billions of years, non-biological atomic and chemical synthesis operating at the pace of physics. This was evolution at its most patient. Over hundreds of millions of years after the Big Bang, gravity pulled those atoms together into vast clouds that collapsed to form the first stars. Inside those stars, nuclear fusion forged heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, iron, the building blocks of everything that would come later. When those stars died, many of them exploded. They scattered these elements across space. New generations of stars formed from the debris, and around them, planets. It took roughly 9 billion years from the Big Bang for our own solar system to form, with a rocky planet at just the right distance from its star for liquid water to exist on its surface. The complex chemistry of the first epoch eventually produced molecules on Earth that could do something new, copy themselves. RNA emerged first, capable of both storing information and driving chemical reactions. How exactly this happened remains one of the biggest open questions in science, but the leading theory is that RNA formed spontaneously from simpler chemical building blocks in the primordial soup of early Earth. Over time, DNA evolved as a more stable medium for recording the instructions of life. DNA emerged roughly 3.5 billion years ago, but for the next 3 billion years or so, life remained relatively simple. Single-celled organisms, algae, and eventually basic multicellular forms like sponges and fungi. Complex life, as we would recognize it, did not yet exist. Then, around 500 million years ago, came the Cambrian Explosion. Within roughly 25 million years, multicellular life diversified at a rate that was, by the standards of the previous epoch, extraordinarily rapid. The oceans filled with trilobites, armoured arthropods with compound eyes, Anomalocaris, a metre-long predator with hooked mouthparts, the first mollusks and echinoderms, and the earliest animals with primitive backbones, the distant ancestors of every vertebrate alive today, including us. The medium of information had shifted from raw chemistry to biological molecules. The timescale had compressed from billions of years to millions, with natural selection introducing new species over periods that, while still enormous by human standards, were orders of magnitude faster than atomic and chemical synthesis. Life itself became the information processing system. DNA became the hard drive. Evolution was picking up. Among the organisms produced by this explosion of biological diversity were the first with nervous systems and brains. For Kurzweil, this marks the third epoch. Brains were biological hardware capable of processing information independently of the genetic code. An organism could now learn within its own lifetime, recognizing patterns and adapting its behavior without waiting for generational turnover. A single creature could now learn directly from experience. This was the first emergence of anything resembling individual intelligence. The cerebellum, which coordinates complex motor skills, took thousands to millions of years to develop through evolutionary refinement. But individual learning within a single organism, a fish learning to avoid a predator after a near miss, could happen in hours. The timescale was compressing again, and this time the compression was happening within a single epoch. Evolution still moved slowly, but the organisms it produced could now move fast. Kurzweil sees this as the first true emergence of consciousness in a primitive form. Brains became centres of intelligence, capable of pattern recognition, memory, and decision-making. They were fragile, slow by the standards of what would come later, and confined by biological limits. But they represented a qualitative leap, information processing that could adapt in real time rather than across generations. An animal with a brain could encounter a new situation and respond to it within moments. An animal without one had to wait for natural selection to encode the response in its DNA, a process measured in thousands of generations. Around 160 million years ago, mammals first appeared. The descendants of therapsids, or mammal-like reptiles. For 100 million years, they remained small and survived in the margins, mostly nocturnal and the size of modern shrews. The dominant animals on Earth were dinosaurs, and mammals had little opportunity to diversify while they ruled. Then, 66 million years ago, a mass extinction event wiped out the dinosaurs and opened ecological niches on a massive scale. Mammals expanded to fill them, growing larger and more diverse, and as they did, their brains grew with them. This led to the fourth epoch. In primates, first appearing roughly 60 million years ago, one structure expanded dramatically: the neocortex, the outermost layer of the brain responsible for sensory perception, spatial reasoning, and conscious thought. The human lineage split from chimpanzees and bonobos roughly 6 to 8 million years ago, with brains about the third the size of modern humans. By the time Homo sapiens appeared, around 300,000 years ago, the neocortex made up around 80% of the brain. The prefrontal cortex, which handles planning, decision-making, and social cognition, had become particularly pronounced. This is where abstract thought lives, the capacity for language, for long-term planning, and for imagining things that do not yet exist. But for Kurzweil, the neocortex alone was not enough. What distinguished humans was the combination of this higher-level cognitive ability with opposable thumbs, the capacity to translate thoughts into complex physical actions. A primate that could imagine a tool and also grip, shape, and wield one. This was the birth of technology. Humans, combining abstract thought with the ability to manipulate tools, began externalizing cognition. Language came first, allowing knowledge to be shared within groups and passed between generations. The first known writing system appeared in Mesopotamia around 3400 BCE, cuneiform inscribed into clay tablets. But as millennia passed, the technology became more sophisticated. The ancient Egyptians invented papyrus. The Chinese developed paper and woodblock printing. And in the 15th century, Gutenberg's printing press made it possible to reproduce and distribute knowledge on a massive scale. Insights recorded in a book could outlive its author by centuries and influence minds that would never meet. In the 20th century, computation went further, by processing information, finding patterns, and performing calculations at speeds no human brain could match. Since the introduction of computers, the acceleration in processing power has been staggering. Kurzweil notes that most advanced mammals added roughly 1 cubic inch of brain matter every 100,000 years through biological evolution. Digital computation doubles its price performance roughly every 16 months. The timescale has compressed again. The neocortex took millions of years to evolve. A human can now master a complex new skill in hours to weeks. By the 2010s, artificial neural networks, systems loosely modelled on the structure of the brain, have become the driving force behind modern AI. A digital neural network can now master complex skills in hours to days, if not minutes. Kurzweil believes Epoch 5 begins around 2029, when AI passes what he terms the strong Turing test, convincing another person at a sustained immersive level that it is at human-level intelligence. From that point, he argues, we could begin connecting our neocortices directly to the cloud, extending human cognition by linking biological brains to digital computing infrastructure. The medium of information processing becomes brain-computer interfaces. The timescale, according to the chart, compresses to seconds to minutes, to explore ideas unimaginable to present-day humans. The early infrastructure already exists in primitive form. Cochlear implants, which convert sound into electrical signals delivered directly to the auditory nerve, have been in use since the 1980s, and over 1 million people worldwide now use them. They are, in the most basic sense, a brain-computer interface. Neuralink is attempting something far more ambitious. In January 2024, it implanted its first human patient, Noland Arbor, and by September 2025, 12 patients had been implanted. Competitors including Synchron and Precision Neuroscience are developing alternative approaches. But these are all therapeutic applications. Cochlear implants restore lost hearing. Neuralink helps paralysed patients control devices. The distance between these medical interventions and healthy people connecting their neocortices to the cloud is vast. In Kurzweil's framework, that gap is just another exponential curve waiting to happen, For skeptics, it's the kind of distance that optimistic timelines have a habit of underestimating. Stuart Russell, the AI safety researcher and author of Human Compatible, has made the point that progress toward general intelligence could require several major conceptual breakthroughs, and these are by nature unpredictable. The sixth and final epoch is defined by Kurzweil as where our intelligence spreads throughout the universe, turning ordinary matter into computronium, which is matter organised at the ultimate density of computation. We are, as it stands, the only known intelligent life in the universe. Elon Musk has used a metaphor of humanity's intelligence and consciousness as a single candle burning in an infinitely vast black space. His ambitions, and thus the goal of SpaceX, are that humanity reaches out from Earth and expands consciousness throughout the cosmos. In his book Superintelligence, the philosopher Nick Bostrom has explored what a cosmic civilization operating at this scale could actually produce. In his concept of the cosmic endowment, he calculates that if technologically mature probes could travel at 50% of the speed of light, they could reach around 6 quintillion stars before the expansion of the universe puts further acquisitions forever out of reach. If 10% of those stars have a habitable planet, and each could sustain 1 billion people for 1 billion years, that yields around 10 to the power of 35 human lives. But Bostrom goes further. By disassembling non-habitable planets, constructing new ones, or building orbital habitats like O'Neill cylinders, the number rises to perhaps 10 to the power of 43. And if we allow for digital minds running on computronium, the figure reaches at least 10 to the power of 58 human lives. Bostrom writes that number out in full, 10 followed by 58 zeros. That is what hangs in the balance, he argues, if a civilization like ours either succeeds or fails. Kurzweil's vision of the sixth epoch operates on a similar scale, with intelligence spreading beyond Earth and the distinction between biological and artificial intelligence disappearing entirely. If that sounds closer to theology than engineering, it has been called the rapture of the nerds by critics. Michael Shermer, founder of Skeptic magazine, identified what he considers a fundamental flaw. For intelligence to saturate the universe, information would need to spread outward from Earth faster than the speed of light, which Einstein demonstrated is impossible. Kurzweil acknowledged this constraint, but speculated there might be subtle deviations or ways to circumvent it. Shermer responded that speculation about bypassing the speed of light is not evidence that it can be done. But we're not in the sixth epoch yet, and its predictions remain highly speculative. Instead, we stand at the boundary between epochs 4 and 5, where we have greater clarity on where this is heading. In my view, the singularity is indeed nearer. I think it will happen in our lifetimes. This is a technological threshold that by its definition is impossible to predict. Whether we cross over the threshold without grave error remains to be seen. But I remain optimistic. A positive future, one where AI-assisted breakthroughs in science and technology benefit humankind, appears to be within reach. Whether we hold it firmly and remain human is the biggest question of the next century. You've been watching Absolutely Agentic. We're a media consultancy and startup focused on AI, and we create weekly YouTube videos and a newsletter we send a few times a week. In a world of AI hype, we're trying to strike a balance, looking at a range of opinions to cut through an increasingly complex world. The best thing you can do to support us is to sign up to the newsletter in the description or subscribe to the channel. But also don't forget to like and leave us a friendly comment. See you next time. It'll be absolutely agentic.